Welcome, everyone, to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guest this week is a Hall of Fame talent whose music has brought joy to fans around the world for decades. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show one of country music's most beautiful voices and one of country music's flat out nicest human beings, Michelle Wright. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. We were chatting before we came on camera, and I sure am delighted to meet you guys and enjoyed the conversation off camera, and looking forward to it now that the light is red.
Well, we're looking forward to it too, Michelle. And before Rosie kicks us off, I do have to pass along something while we're on camera because I promised him I would do this a couple of weeks ago when we interviewed another incredibly talented Canadian artist, Kevin Pauls from the Undercovers. He wanted to make sure that we said hello to you. So hello from Kevin.
That's lovely. I've had the pleasure to work with Kevin a few times throughout the years, and that's delightful. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm
Oh,
using the
we
word
are
delightful
happy.
a lot right now, aren't I? Delightful seems to be my word right now.
That's okay. We don't mind delightful. You're delightful, love.
Ah.
It's nice to have you on the show because we have a lot of amazing artists on the show, and a lot of them are powerhouse men. And it's nice to have a powerhouse woman on the show. We're changing it up a little bit.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we also appreciate our first and longest running sponsor of the show, Tom and his team of insurance professionals at the Malin Agency. If world-class customer service and doing business with someone you can trust is important to you, give Tom and his team a call today for all your insurance needs.
Michelle, we understand that you grew up on a farm in Canada. And we're curious, how did that upbringing influence you and introduce you to music? And when did you get drawn into country music?
Well, I in fact grew up in a little small farming community called Merlin, Ontario, population 500, just on the Canadian side of Detroit, just past Windsor, about 45 minutes up the 401, close to Chatham, Toronto, London, sort of that area, and so my parents were soybean farmers. We did soybean, corn, wheat, and I picked tomatoes and cucumbers and drove tractors and plowed the fields and took the bins, the soybeans to the mill and did all that farming stuff, which was so wonderful. I'm so thankful that I grew up that way. I learned how to work hard and get the job done. But my mother and father were also country music singers. So, actually, my mother and father separated when I was very young. They actually got married a wee bit too young themselves. And a few years down the road, they realized that maybe this wasn't the best of ideas. But they brought myself and my brother into the world, and my mother remarried a few years later, and to my stepfather, Doug Wright. And that's when we moved to the farm in Merlin. But my mother was a country singer from the time I can remember, playing in bands and clubs and legions and moose lodges and weddings and what have you. And my dad was also a country music singer. So when I would go to visit him, I'd be accustomed to him, throwing his guitar into the pickup truck and off to a gig somewhere he'd be going. So I was raised around parents that sang country music, and they introduced me to the greats. And
Did you
from the
think it was cool that your
I
parents were singers?
I really did. I absolutely loved it because mom would bring me to band practice on Wednesday nights. There'd either be band practice at the drummer's house, Doug Sykes at the drummer's house in Chatham up the road, or in the garage on the farm. And so I would always go to band practice, and she'd get me up to sing a little bit here and there. And then when I go to my dad's, and the other kind of cool thing about it was that if dad wasn't going to a gig or mom wasn't, the neighbors would come over and the guitars would come out and accordions, and we'd be sitting around the kitchen table on a Saturday night singing and playing. And so I was exposed very young to it. And then I actually ultimately ended up playing the drums. Karen Carpenter was quite an influence to me, And I ended up getting behind the drums and played the drums for a little bit, and then decided I wanted to learn how to play acoustic guitar. So my brother taught me how to play acoustic guitar. Now, my mom was a bass player, and my brother played guitar, and I played the drums. So we'd practice in the garage all the time playing music. So truly, music and farming and sports and my little small community was a big part of my life.
So you were singing with your mom and your family. When did you actually start a band?
I was 14 years old when I started my first band, and I so wish I could remember the name, because I do remember that we had t-shirts made up. I stay in touch a little bit with some of the guys from from that band, you know. Jeff is the name of the one fella, and I'm not remembering his last name right now, and Wally Hansen and myself, and we actually played at the high school Halloween party one year, and we dressed up as Kiss while I'm singing Satin Sheets to Lie On. Was interesting, but yeah, I dressed up as Kiss, and we all did, and that was really my first band. But I was by the time I was 17, I was playing professionally, and it was kind of a fun story because mom was in a band called the Reflections, and quite frankly, they were the most popular band in that neighborhood. You know, all around that area, the Reflections was the kind of the band you called if you wanted a good show. And so the phone rang one evening, and it was a fellow calling for my mom. And he said, "Hey, we're just calling to see if your mom would be interested in coming to join our band." And I said, "Well, mom's not home right now, but I might be interested. Maybe you'd consider me, you know, I'd like to join a band." And he said, "Well, you need to talk to your mom first. We certainly would, you know, like to see whether or not she wants to join the band." And so she came home, and I mentioned about the call, and the band was called the Marquis. And she said, "Well, no, honey, I'm quite satisfied with the band that I'm with," her band, The Reflections. And so I went and auditioned with the Marquis, and I got the gig at 17, got my first paying job. And then I moved on to the Melody Ramblers when I was 18, because they were the next most popular band. And then I actually auditioned for my first road band in between. I was going to college, and I was going to do 2 years. And in between the first and second year, I got an opportunity to audition with a band from Nashville, actually, and they were a road band. I ran into a booking agent at a gig that I was doing from Michigan, and he said, "I think you'd be good for some of my bands." So I went and auditioned for Wild Oats in between my years of college, and I got the gig, and I actually turned 20 my first week on the road in July. And I called my mom up and said, "Mama, I think I'm not going back to school. I
Mm,
think I'm going to follow this road." I wrote a song actually called "Reaching for the Stars" that week in my old rinky-dink broken down hotel room, and quite frankly, I've not looked back, and that's
wow.
43 years ago. Yeah,
That's amazing. Bill,
yeah.
before you ask your next question, I have to say, when you said that you said to the guy on the phone, "Well, I'm available," I thought, you little ingrate, you're gonna.
Maybe you consider me. I'll let my mom know, but you know,
That's great.
you should pick me. She's busy already.
Yeah. Hey, you know, everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad that that worked out. And I really appreciate, Michelle, you sharing all of that, because one thing I thought was interesting was looking back at when you released your first CD in 1988, "Do Right by Me," and it did incredibly well in Canada and also got attention here in the States. But you didn't just start like the week or the year before. You had already been working hard, performing 6 nights a week, putting it out there. And I was just so happy to hear that background that led up to that point, because when I heard about what happened to you from 88, then 90, Arista Nashville signed you as one of their flagship artists just a couple of years later. So, what are some of your fondest memories from that period when you put out that first CD and then 2 years later, bam, you're on Arista Nashville?
Gosh, you know, it's so funny. Of course, I don't really, you know, talk much about myself unless I'm in a situation like this where I'm being interviewed and being asked questions. And so many memories flood over me where I feel like I could just talk for an hour about those early days. I played the clubs for 9 years before I got my 6 nights a week. And I drove the trucks and loaded them up and loaded them in the gear in and out of the hotels and lived up above those interesting honky tonks. And I paid my dues, no two ways about it. And and let me just share with you how I ended up making the Do Right by Me record. That record was made in 1985, and how it got made is because I was playing a club in Ottawa, Ontario, and I was coming off the set, coming off from our fort. We had one more set to go, and it was midnight, and we had get off at midnight and go back up and play till 1 o'clock. And the bartender said your agent called and she wants you to call her. So I called her up and she said, "Hey, Michelle, the noon hour slot at a festival down the road, about 3 hours from Ottawa, a town called Maxville, Ontario. The noon hour slot, the act is canceled, and they need someone to fill in that slot. Would you do it?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, we're gonna play till 1. We usually don't get to sleep till 3. I got to get the band up at 7, and then we got to be there by 10 so we can get set up to go by noon." I said, "But we're gonna do it, boys. So go to bed. Let's go do this." I was on stage singing our 1 hour set. I was doing my last song of that 1 hour set. I was singing a song by Exile because I used to do a lot of male songs to separate myself from all the girls coming through the clubs every week. And Rick Giles, who was an upcoming record producer and songwriter in Nashville, was there to see another friend of a friend of mine now today, a gentleman named Gilles Godard, who just went into the Hall of Fame in Canada as an industry builder. Rick showed up, my last song, and he was there to see Gilles, and he was backstage, and he was going, "Man, that man up there has a really interesting voice." And he came around to the front of the stage and saw this little 25-year-old, little skinny, little long-haired girl standing there singing, and he said, "I cannot believe that that's a girl singing with that big, deep, rich voice." So introduced himself to me backstage. I introduced him to my manager. They made the Do Right by Me record. That Do Right by Me record, 4 years later, got me my record deal with Arista Nashville because Tim Dubois heard it. And it changed my whole life, just having that, making that record. And if Rick hadn't showed up 3 or 4 minutes later, I have no idea what would have happened to this little Canadian girl from Canada. But this cat from Nashville, who was hungry and talented and looking for someone to write for and produce for, found me, made that record with his partner Steve Bogard, and that record got me my deal with Arista Nashville. And those early days with Arista, myself, Alan Jackson, and Leroy Parnell were the first 3 artists signed to Arista. And of course, after that came Brooks and Dunn and Pam Tillis and Diamond Rio and on, right? I mean, my
Yeah.
gosh, that label was so, and we had the best time. I was there for 11 years and I cherish it always. And we actually are in a little Facebook group. Most of the staff and some of us artists, we stay in contact all the time, all these years.
That's really great. You sound so grateful. And
Oh,
that's really nice to hear that you're still aware of what a blessing. Now, obviously, you were given a lot of talent and you worked really hard and you earned it, but it's nice. It's nice.
there's a lot of talented people out there, truly, and
Right.
why it's a mystery, isn't it? Why someone gets a break or why
Right.
it's almost like when I'm talking to young artists and they'll ask me, questions. The bottom line is that if you have the passion and the work ethic and the desire and something that about you that keeps, because I mean, it's almost like every step I took, someone would come along and my path to help me, and if you've got something that keeps drawing people to you a little bit, and then it's almost like it's out of your hands. You just got to keep showing up and perhaps something will happen. And I cannot tell you how thankful, because we like to party quite a bit those days, and I could have went 7 a.m. No, that's too early for us, and not gone.
Right.
Thank God I was somehow wise enough to do it.
Yeah, you had your priorities in order. I want to fast.
I actually always have. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Even though, we used to like to have things have tamed down quite a bit, needless to say, but we used to have a pretty good time out there.
Well, you got to have fun. In
Yes.
1992, you released Now and Then, and your song "Take It Like a Man" just blew up. Did you have an idea that that would happen? Because sometimes artists, they have a sense that, you know what, this is something about this song, it's going to go. Or maybe not. Maybe it was a big surprise to you. So I'm curious to know how that worked for you. And also, did you ever visualize that success for yourself?
Wow, what a great question. I visualize it always.
Mm.
Hmm.
I would play the bars and there'd be like a couple of drunks in the corner, and I would pretend there were 5,000 people out there. And I would put on a show like there were every night. I just, that's so great that you asked that question because I think that's also really, really important. I absolutely visualized my success.
Mm.
And gosh, it sounds a little, I'm gonna say it sounds a little full of myself to even say that, but when you're young and you're full of it and you're full of that passion and that drive and that dream and that desire and it's not about ego. It's just about being young and passionate and full of
Yeah.
drive and desire. And I absolutely visualized it. And when I heard "Take It Like a Man," I knew that song was for me. It had been passed to Trisha, to Faith Hill, to Winona, and the girls just passed on, as we do. My God, I passed on. Maybe it was Memphis. I was Canadian. I thought, what do I know about Memphis? But you pass through your for whatever reasons. So when I heard that song, I was like, well, that's my song. And then we were in the studio recording it, and when we got the tracks done, and we were sitting in the master area where you're listening back to everything in the main control room, the drummer said, if that's not a hit, I'm going to go sell shoes for a living. And I remember I was looking down at my notes, and I just remember I didn't look up, I didn't say anything. I was just like, oh God, please, 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 because this was my second album with Arista, and we needed to have a pretty big hit by this point. So I had a feeling, and thankfully we were right. But I will tell you, it was a hard sell. It went to number 8 on the charts, and because it was different. It was different than
Hmm.
the typical thing going on at the time, and that's sort of another way artists can sometimes break through by presenting something that's maybe a little different than the normal. Somehow it draws people's ear or their attention. So we had to fight pretty hard to get that song up to even number 8, but it has absolutely been a career-making record for me. To this day, people will sing, someone will say, "You're the girl that sings Take It Like a Man," and they'll start singing it. So it's pretty amazing. By the way, also written by one guy. Tony Hazelden wrote that song. One man wrote that. I think everybody thought it was me and a bunch of my girlfriends hanging out in the kitchen complaining about our boys or something. And it was actually one fellow, Tony Hazelden, who wrote that.
I think another fascinating aspect, Michelle, about the song is also the video. I mean, I don't know how many times over the years I've watched the video, but how cool is it for the video to go to number 1 on CMT? I mean, CMT was the world at that time.
Yes, you know what? And I think that was certainly that video drew a lot of attention. I was very athletic and still am actually, and very fit and very, was kind of a, woman power, girl power and just strutting my stuff and, and so it definitely, and women were not offended by it, which was delightful. I think that the women knew that I wasn't trying to be anything other than myself and I was just a strong, young, athletic girl, and that's how I presented myself, and it worked, thankfully.
I have to say that that album, which now and then I believe went double platinum, and there were other hit singles off of it besides Take It Like a Man. So what I'm wondering is, and you mentioned that 11-year run and those other artists that signed with Arista Nashville at that time or over those next few years. What was that run like for you? I mean, did you ever have time to relax?
Well, no, for sure. I hear every artist say this, including myself. Another really powerful song that came from that record was a song called He Would Be 16,
Oh,
which was
yes.
about adoption. And I did not want to record that song. I thought, at that time I was jumping off of drum risers and running out into the audience and, putting on a pretty rock and roll show. And that song was pretty powerful and reflecting on adoption. And I just thought, I didn't know if I wanted wanted to bring my show down to that sort of thing, you know, but I brought it out live and instant response from people. It was very powerful, and I'm very proud that I got to be the voice of that song. And thinking about the pace that I was on at the time, as most of us were on that label, as we're trying you know, bring it to the people and make it
Hmm.
happen. And, it was let me just say, and I've heard so many art. If I could do it again, I probably would enjoy it a little bit more, because
Hmm.
you're almost so you're under so much pressure and you're going so fast that you just aren't you're just so nervous that is this next song going to be the hit I need?
Yeah.
Am I going to sell enough records? But on the other hand, we traveled the world. I've been on every continent in the world except for Antarctica, and I'll go there if there's a place to play, you know. It was wonderful. So, but there were definitely times of just sheer exhaustion. Yeah. But I was really taking good care of myself and was not, you know, being too wild and crazy, and really taking it very, very seriously and being really responsible. But and working out and eating well and all the rest. And even in spite of that, there were some pretty exhausting times. But that's what it takes, you know.
Yeah, and Michelle, before Rosie asks her next question, I just want to make a comment, if I may, because when you talked about kind of, you know, almost taking that chance with "He Would Be 16," which is a beautiful song and a beautiful story behind it. But to me, going from "Take It Like a Man" to "He Would Be 16" would be kind of like Tim McGraw going from "I Like It, I Love It" to "Please Don't Take the Girl."
Gosh, yes, yes.
You know, it's
Yeah.
powerful on both ends.
Boy, and talk about a man who knows how to pick a great song. So I love so many of his songs.
Mhm.
Michelle, we understand that you just put out a new Christmas album, A Wright Christmas and More. And this includes remastered versions of some of the songs that you originally released in 2005, but also three brand new songs. So, what inspired the new album, and how did you go about picking the new songs? What can you tell us?
Well, I want to say thanks to my label here in Nashville, to Audi and BFD. They've been just a great, you know, an artist like myself who's been around for a while still needs a team and needs support and needs record labels and managers and, you know, people like that to help me continue to do what I do. And they came on board with me a few years ago and helped me actually put my milestone album out. My milestone album was my last album 2 years ago, and it was the celebration of the 30th anniversary of Take It Like a Man. So we recorded 10 new sides. We re-recorded Take It Like a Man exactly the same as it was recorded initially, same key, same, and actually used four of the same original musicians, and then nine new songs. So that album came out with their support. And then they were looking at my catalog, because I have several albums that I've recorded independently. And they suggested that we re-release my masters of some of my other records that I've recorded. And they asked me about the Christmas record. And that Christmas record is called a Wright Christmas. And it's just a record I'm so proud of. And I recorded, you know, my favorite Christmas songs on that record. And they said, look, we'd like to take that in there, remaster those original tracks, and add three new sides to it. What do you think? And I'm like, absolutely. Just love to reintroduce that record to the public again, because I just think it's really my one of my favorites that I've recorded. Because I sing a little differently, like, you know, have yourself a merry little Christmas. It's very different than take it like a man. You know, it's a whole different way of singing, and I love doing it. So I got to write with Jeannie Seely, you guys,
Oh,
legendary Jeannie Seely, you know.
yeah.
Don't touch me if you don't love me anymore. My mother used to sing that song all the time, and God rest her soul. If she knew that I wrote, well, maybe she does know, but you know, she would have just been so excited for me that I wrote with Jeannie Seely and Victoria Shaw, who's just gone into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. So Victoria, Jeannie, and I got together and wrote a song called "Let's Make Memories for Christmas," which is such a fun song. And then I also got together with my producer, Bob Funk, and my very best friend, his wife, Patricia Conroy, who is also a fellow Canadian country music singer and Hall of Famer, and a great songwriter. She's had cuts from Trisha Yearwood to Lady A to a bunch of people out there. So we got together and wrote a song called Christmas is Here. It is so beautiful, you guys. Christmas is here. And it's just beautiful. And then we recorded Silver Bells and we've repackaged it and put it together. And I'm so excited to have it out there again.
Wow. Well, Michelle, I have to make a comment and ask just one more question that just popped into my head as you were just singing a couple of lines from those songs. And over the years, because I've been a country music fan now, basically since about the time Now and Then came out, 92, 93. It started with Chris Ledoux, John Berry, you just expand Diamond Rio, all of those all that great music. But I have to say that to me, when I listen to your voice today, I look back at the videos from you back then. You sound as good today as you did then. It is absolutely amazing. Truly one of the most amazing voices I've ever heard. How are you able to do it? How are you able to maintain it?
Do you want to know? Someone just recently asked me that question as well when I was out doing a little singer-songwriter talk and answer question thing. I have to tell you, I don't really do much of anything. I just sing and I don't smoke, and I take pretty good care of myself and I'm just praying that maybe I'm going to be one of those lucky ones because there are artists out there that have been able to sing to the very end, and I know that for some artists, for some reason, it gets challenging. Now, at this point, at 63 years old, I still seem to be able to sing as I did then, and in some ways better. And so thank you for saying that. And I love to sing. It's one of the joys of my life. And I surely hope that I can just keep going for as long as this will hold up, because I'm good. I'm ready. I want to be there. So as long as this comes along with me, hopefully I'll keep it going.
Well, we sure hope so, because you really have been blessed with a gift, and keep using it because it brings joy to a lot of people.
Thank you.
And Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. The time flies by so fast, but we're looking forward to the Christmas album and bringing in the holidays with your new album. And good luck on all you've got going in 2025.
Thank you very much. The Christmas record's called A Wright Christmas and More, by the way. We kept the same title and more. And thank you so much. I got a bunch of touring that I'm looking forward to, and it's such a pleasure to meet you guys. And thanks for having me on your show.
Our pleasure, and we wish you all the best. And folks, we thank you as always for tuning in. We couldn't do this without you, and we'll see you next week.
Doesn't seem that long ago I hit the road with my guitar, playing 6 nights a week, paying dues in smoky bars. Sometimes it's still hard to believe how far this road and you have carried me. When the
This week's episode has been brought to you by Doherty & Company Insurance Services for all your business and personal insurance needs. Our friends at Tennis Addiction in Exton, PA. And the Malin Agency, where exceeding expectations is how they do business.